So my next question is going to be related to sort of porn and virtual sex. Because younger, as I understand it, and I don't have the direct source or citation for this, but it seems to be that younger generations are actually having less and less sex, and there could be many different causes. There probably are many different causes, but it would seem to me that in a world of kind of ubiquitous beauty, if people are able to modify that, and ubiquitous kind of extreme sex, that a certain insensitivity develops, right? Where the real world pales in comparison. And, I follow VR, less so AR, but VR reasonably closely. And I do think, Ready Player One is probably closer than we would like to think. But I imagine when you have technologies like Neuralink and direct, computer brain interfaces, which could be good for a lot of things, but my feeling is that, virtual sex and kind of immersive porn is probably not going to use haptic suits. So these suits that just have like a vibration in your chest or something is very dissatisfying. Ultimately, when it gets to certain types of things, like if you're getting shot by a ghost in a video game, fine. But if you are having sex with someone, probably not the sensation you're looking for. But it seems to me that as with many technologies, porn is going to probably drive a lot of the pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
So this is a very, because like no one will ever admit to going to Pornhub, and yet it's like the 4th most visited website in the world or something. How far away do you think we are from that, or how do you think about this? Because I think the destabilization that it will exert, not just upon people, productivities, the disruption of relationships, possibly procreation, putting aside the kind of Children of Men movie type scenarios, which is a whole separate thing. I mean, that this could even be, I could see it being weaponized, where like politicians get involved because of the sort of macro effects that these things have. Maybe I'm just spinning a science fiction yarn, but what are your thoughts?
Okay. I'm like taking so many mental notes as you talk. By the way, Tim, you are an excellent futurist.
Thanks.
I want to invite you. You have visited me once at the Institute for the Future. I would like to invite you back sometime. I want to pick your brain for some of your wild scenarios, because they're informed, right? You talk to so many interesting people that you hear these signals coming. So let's see. Okay. So first of all, yes, definitely. Porn is almost always at the vanguard of new technologies. It's one of the biggest drivers of sex and porn will drive adoption of new technologies. There's a huge interest in neural implants, as you suggest. I do think there is considerable interest in developing neural implants. First wave will be for mental health, for treating intractable depression and suicidal ideation. That will be the first wave. Second wave, maybe sex and fun. And you could definitely imagine a society in which our orgasm needs are met by a neural implant rather than through physical sex. And what I find fascinating to think about is, could we map out all of the possible consequences, maybe some positive, maybe some negative, but what happens when we don't have to have physical encounters, essentially, and we're seeing that through porn, but the difference between neural stimulation is it wouldn't need to use imagery. So I actually think it would be better in some cases to get an orgasm through neural stimulation rather than through porn, because a lot of the porn that's being created today is, I think, really, what's the word I want to use? There's a lot of violence in it that if you look at the research for why younger people are having so much less sex, the biggest reason that's coming up in the research right now is that women see the choking, the slapping, the hitting in the porn. It's become normalized, and they don't want to be choked and slapped and hit. They see sex as more violent than it traditionally has been. And so we've got this whole generation of young women who look at the imagery that's being consumed and produced and think like, I don't know, that doesn't seem like something I actually want to be experiencing. If we didn't have to be creating these visual representations, and we could, I mean, people might actually come back to sex if they weren't being shown versions of sex that they personally did not want to participate in.
May I add something to that?
Yes.
So I
because
think
it's all crazy and hypothetical.
Yeah, no, I think a huge part of it is that males become desensitized to the appeal of, let's just call it everyday or normal sex. Because if you can have a threesome or foursome with like, nubile young women who will enthusiastically do anything, even if it doesn't include violence and these other sort of acts of aggression. Let's say it's not that. Let's say it's just all fun and games. But if you kind of have access on demand to the most outrageous fantasies that you could possibly have instantaneously with broadband, I think there is a desensitization. Also, I think sex drive from males who are, I think if we want to call a spade, typically sort of initiating interest or sexual advances. If they are constantly depleting themselves physically, there are kind of physical self-regulatory mechanisms that will lower sex drive, right? So I do think that's a huge part of it.
Right. And it could change culture. I mean, if men are just acting differently, if women are acting differently, so much of society is right now oriented around finding sexual partners. Our grooming, our physical routines, our social encounters, like our dreams, our hopes that we imagine for ourselves. If we were to put that time or energy, now let's say, but I'm positing that we're not getting addicted to this stimulation. It's highly regulated in the way that like you can't, I don't know, buy more than X amount of stimulant medication. It's controlled. I'm assuming it's going to be controlled. If it's not, we're in a lot of trouble. But people like just pouring their energy, their male energy, their female energy, their genderqueer energy into whatever else they might want to do other than just trying to find a mate is going to be really interesting. Like in a way, it's as radical as not having to work 40-hour work weeks and the time and energy that frees up for other things. If we're not,
I think it is so fundamental that it's. I think it's going to rock everything. It's because, I was looking up the source. Oscar Wilde said everything in the world is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. Now, putting aside the meaning or the interpretations of the last line for a second, which I think is interesting, but that's a whole separate podcast. But it's like if you look at, I'll just speak from the male perspective because the vast majority of what men do in this world, certainly up in sometimes exceeding the point at which they have kids, revolves around sort of preferred mating abilities. That's it. It's like all of it. The fucking cars, the fucking money, the power, it's all going straight to sex. So when you start to remove that incentive in the real world, holy shit.
Oh my God.